Welcome to the deep dive. Ever wondered why some organizations feel incredibly rigid and others, well, maybe a bit chaotic, but super innovative?
Or, some just seem to run like clockwork, especially with professionals in charge.
Exactly. Today, we're plunging into a really powerful framework that helps us understand just that. How organizations are put together, how they actually function, and maybe why they take these distinct shapes. Our source material today is focusing on the work of Henry Mintzberg. He offered a truly different way to look under the hood of pretty much any structured group.
That's right, because often we just look at the lines on an org chart, who reports to whom. But Mintzberg, he gives us a view into the actual, let's say, anatomy of the organization.
Anatomy, I like that. The key components and the forces that make it tick.
Yeah.
So our mission for this deep dive is basically to unpack Mintzberg's model. We want to identify these fundamental building blocks he talks about, explore the different ways they try to keep things coordinated, and then see how the dominance of different blocks leads to really distinct organizational structures.
It's about getting a clearer lens, really, for seeing the hidden dynamics in, say, companies, schools, hospitals.
Even volunteer groups, right? Anywhere people are trying to work together towards some kind of goal.
Absolutely. So maybe let's start by acknowledging that the traditional models, they often describe structure by relationships, functional departments, matrix teams.
The usual silos or grids.
But Mintzberg steps back. He says, hang on, there are core parts to any organization, pretty much regardless of its chart.
Okay.
And he identifies 5 generic components, things that are present in some form everywhere.
Okay, so not just the lines between the boxes, but the essential boxes themselves, kind of. What are these 5 core components then?
He calls them the strategic apex, the operating core, the middle line, the technostructure, and the support staff.
Okay, quite a list. Strategic apex, middle line, operating core, technostructure, support staff.
Think of them like the essential organs of the organizational body, maybe?
The strategic apex. That sounds like the head, the brain.
Precisely. This is the leadership directors, senior execs, whoever holds that overall responsibility.
Okay.
Their main job. Setting the overall direction, the mission, the strategy. They also manage the organization's relationship with the outside world.
The environment, competitors, regulations, all that.
Exactly. They're trying to make sure the whole system is cohesive and, moving in roughly the intended direction.
So the leaders defining the what and dealing with the external where. Makes sense. How about the operating core?
That's the engine room. This is where the primary work actually gets done.
Right.
The people directly producing the goods or delivering the services, interacting with clients, performing those core tasks the organization basically exists for.
The hands-on doers.
Okay.
And the middle line, what's their role? Connecting the two.
Exactly. The middle line connects that strategic apex, the top, to the operating core, the bottom. These are your managers, your supervisors. Now, in really small, simple organizations, this layer might be super thin or maybe not even there.
Like a startup owner talking directly to the coders.
Yeah, precisely. But in larger, more complex places, they're crucial. They interpret the plans and expectations from the top and guide the operating core's work so it aligns. They're kind of translating strategy into action on the ground.
Okay, the manager's bridging that gap.
Yeah.
That leaves the technostructure and the support staff. They sound related, but you listed them separately.
They are distinct, yeah. The technostructure, these are analysts and specialists. They don't usually manage line staff directly, but they influence the work by standardizing it.
Standardizing? How so?
Think of roles in planning, scheduling, maybe training design, quality control, finance procedures, HR policies. They design the systems, the processes, the rules that guide how other people work.
Okay. So they're building the scaffolding and maybe writing the instruction manuals for how things get done.
That's a good way to put it. They standardize how things are done.
Okay. So then the support staff must be different.
Yes. Support staff units provide specialized services that support the rest of the organization, but they aren't part of that core production flow.
Like internal services.
Exactly. Think R&D, maybe legal counsel, public relations, building maintenance, the cafeteria even. Their output helps the strategic apex, middle line, and operating core do their jobs better, more effectively. But they aren't directly making the main product or delivering the core service themselves.
Okay, that clarifies it. So you've got the leaders, apex, the doers, core, the managers linking them, middle line, the process designers, technostructure, and the internal service providers, support staff. It's quite neat thinking of these as universal building blocks.
It is.
But how does it matter which of these blocks is, say, most influential? How does that affect the overall organization?
This is where Mintzberg's framework gets really powerful, I think. He argues that the relative strength and influence of these 5 parts dramatically shapes the organization's character, its structure, and critically, each of these components tends to favor a particular way of coordinating activity across the organization.
A preferred method to make sure everyone's pulling in the same direction, sort of.
Exactly. So the strategic apex, especially when it's dominant, it relies on direct supervision.
Makes sense. The boss tells people what to do.
Pretty much. The leader or that small top team makes the key decisions and directs others explicitly. Think of that small startup founder again, just telling everyone what needs doing.
Very hands-on coordination.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the middle line?
The middle line, when they're influential, they tend to coordinate by promoting the standardization of outputs.
Outputs, so like setting targets.
Yeah. They set performance goals, maybe project outcomes for the units they oversee. They give those units some flexibility in how they achieve them, as long as the outputs are consistent and meet the targets.
Okay, so set the destination, let the teams figure out the best route. Got it.
Right. Then you have the technostructure. They're focused on processes, remember?
The rule writers.
So they drive coordination through the standardization of work processes. They want defined procedures, rules, workflows that everyone follows. Consistency, efficiency.
The rule book approach.
Yeah.
Makes sense for them. And the operating core, how do they prefer to coordinate?
Well, when the core workers are highly skilled, think professionals coordination often happens through the standardization of skills. Meaning people are trained to high professional standards before they even start the job. Those internalized norms, the training, the skills they bring, that guides their work and how they coordinate with other skilled colleagues.
Like surgeons in an operating room. They know their roles, they trust each other's training.
Exactly. That's a perfect example.
Okay, so we have direct instruction from the top, setting goals or targets from the middle, defining processes from the technostructure, or relying on standardized professional skills in the core. Mintzberg says, depending on which of these elements and its preferred coordination method becomes the primary force.
That's when we see these distinct organizational shapes or structures emerge. He identified 5 key organizational structures or configurations that tend to arise from the dominance of one of these elements or its coordination mechanism.
5 distinct types. Okay, let's break them down. What's the first one?
The first is what he calls the simple structure.
Simple structure. Sounds straightforward.
It is, generally. Here, the strategic apex is the dominant part, and coordination happens primarily through direct supervision. Power is really centralized with the founder, the CEO, maybe a small executive team.
So think of a small business owner calling all the shots. That classic model.
Exactly. It's typically pretty informal, very flexible, and often has a strong, clear mission driven by that central figure. Its strength is definitely agility, speed.
But there must be a downside.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Mintzberg famously points out its major vulnerability. He says, one heart attack can wipe out the organization's prime coordinating mechanism.
Ouch. Yeah, if that central brain is removed.
The whole structure is suddenly at risk because there's no backup system for coordination. It's all reliant on that one person or small group.
High risk, high reward structure, potentially. Okay, what's next after simple?
Next up is the machine bureaucracy.
Machine bureaucracy. Okay, sounds less simple.
Definitely less simple. This structure is dominated by the technostructure. Remember them. The process standardizers.
Right, the rule writers, the process designers.
So coordination here is mainly through that standardization of work processes. It's characterized by highly formalized procedures, very specialized tasks, routine operations.
Lots of rules and steps.
Lots of rules, lots of steps, and usually many layers of management in that middle line to oversee it all.
This sounds like the classic image of bureaucracy, doesn't it?
It really is. Think large factories, maybe some government agencies with very strict rules and procedures for everything.
Right.
The operating core's tasks are pretty rigid. The workers often have very little discretion.
I can see how that would be efficient for certain things.
Oh, absolutely. It excels at efficiency and consistency for routine, predictable tasks. But the downsides, well, it can be incredibly slow to change, unreceptive, and it can really struggle with employee motivation because there's so little autonomy.
Yeah, I can imagine. The source gave an example.
Yeah, large-scale car manufacturing plants were mentioned as a classic example. highly standardized assembly lines.
Okay, predictable output, but maybe a bit stifling for the people inside.
Yeah.
How does the professional bureaucracy differ then? Sounds like might still be bureaucratic.
It shares the bureaucracy name, yes, but it's quite different in its driving force. The professional bureaucracy is dominated by the operating core.
By the doers, the skilled workers.
Exactly. And coordination happens through the standardization of skills, which we talked about earlier.
Ah, right. Like the surgeon's example.
Precisely. Like the machine bureaucracy, it uses standardization. But the crucial difference is that the standards are based on professional training and norms established externally.
Externally, like professional bodies or universities.
Yeah, law, medicine, accounting, education. These fields have external standards, so the standardization comes from the professionals themselves, from their training and their professional community, not primarily from internal process analysts in the technostructure.
Okay, that's a key distinction. So the professionals have more say.
They do. The professionals in the operating core have significant autonomy within their area of expertise, governed by their training and those professional standards.
So it feels different to work in.
Often, yes. This structure tends to be more democratic, maybe easier to motivate people because individuals identify strongly with their profession and have more control over their actual work.
And examples would be?
Universities, hospitals, large law firms, accounting practices, places where doctors, professors, lawyers, engineers hold significant influence and coordinate largely through their shared knowledge and training.
Got it. So expertise drives the structure, not just internal rules. Interesting. Okay, that's 3. What's the 4th type?
The 4th is the divisionalized form.
Divisionalized. Okay.
Here, the middle line becomes the dominant influence. Those managers connecting the top and bottom, they're key here.
And their preferred coordination
is the standardization of outputs. Remember, setting targets.
Right. Performance goals for their units.
Exactly. So the organization is divided into relatively autonomous business units or divisions. Each division might actually resemble a machine bureaucracy or maybe something else internally.
Okay.
But they're overseen by a central headquarters, a relatively small central core.
Like a big parent company with several distinct businesses or product lines underneath it.
That's the classic model, yeah. The central headquarters provides the overall strategy, allocates resources, and crucially, sets performance targets, those standardized outputs for the divisions.
And the middle line managers run the divisions to meet those targets.
Exactly. The division managers, who are part of that powerful middle line, translate those central demands into objectives and actions for their specific units.
What's the advantage of this?
It allows large diversified companies to manage very different markets or product lines pretty effectively. It gives them focus.
What downsides?
Well, it can lead to silos between the divisions. Sometimes the goals of one division might conflict with the overall corporate goals or with other divisions. Coordination between divisions can be tricky.
I can see that. And this is common for big companies.
Very typical of large multinational corporations, yes. Managing diverse global operations often pushes them towards this kind of structure.
Okay. Decentralized operations under centralized targets driven by the middle managers. That leaves one more structure.
The 5th and final one Mintzberg describes is the adhocracy.
Adhocracy. Sounds ad hoc, temporary.
It has that feel, yes. It's characterized by a shifting pattern of dominance. It often involves the support staff, remember R&D, and the operating core, especially when they're highly skilled experts.
Okay, so not one clear dominant part all the time.
Not really. And the main coordination mechanism is mutual adjustment.
Mutual adjustment.
Essentially, people coordinating informally as they go. Adapting to each other's needs, communicating directly, figuring things out collaboratively. It's designed for innovation and really rapid response to change.
Sounds much less formal than all the others we've discussed.
Oh, much less. There's often minimal formal hierarchy, few rigid procedures. Work gets organized around projects or tasks.
So project teams.
Yeah, often multidisciplinary project teams that cut across traditional functions. They rely heavily on collaboration and expertise wherever it resides.
Where would you find this kind of structure?
It thrives in complex, dynamic environments where flexibility and learning are absolutely key. Think consulting firms, advertising agencies, or companies in really rapidly evolving industries like high-tech, biotech, R&D labs.
So it's good for creativity and change.
Hugely powerful for complex problem-solving and innovation, but it can be pretty chaotic. And it's often inefficient for routine, standardized tasks. There can be ambiguity about roles and authority.
Right. Makes sense. Not ideal for running a predictable factory line.
Definitely not.
Okay, so let me try and recap the 5 quickly. Simple structure. APEC on top, direct supervision, agile but fragile. Machine bureaucracy. Technostructure rules, standardized processes, efficient but rigid and potentially demotivating.
Got it.
Professional bureaucracy. Operating core experts rule, standardized skills from outside, expertise-driven but maybe coordination challenges across professions.
Good summary.
Divisionalized form, middle line managers rule, standardized outputs for autonomous units, good for diversity but potential silos, and adhocracy. Fluid structure often supports staff experts, mutual adjustment, innovative and flexible, but can be chaotic and inefficient.
That nails the core trade-offs Mintzberg highlights for each one.
It's really interesting to think about how these might have sort of evolved over time, too. Did Mintzberg comment on that?
He did, yeah. He suggested that historically, the simple structures and especially the machine bureaucracies were much more prevalent, particularly during the industrial age, tied to manufacturing mass production.
That makes sense. And what about more recently or today?
Well, he saw the professional and the divisionalized forms becoming more common later on. That reflects, the rise of knowledge work, service economies, and large, diversified global businesses.
Okay. And did he predict anything about the future? What about the adhocracy?
He absolutely predicted the adhocracy would be an increasing importance. And that prediction seems to resonate really strongly in today's economy, doesn't it? Fast-paced, constant change, innovation-driven.
It really does. You see so many companies, especially in tech, trying to be more agile, more project-based, breaking down silos. It sounds a lot like striving for adhocracy, even if they don't call it that.
Exactly, or at least incorporating elements of it.
It's fascinating how this framework just gives you a language, a set of tools to analyze the fundamental dynamics of almost any organization you encounter. Like when you walk into a place, you can start to almost feel it, can't you? You could start to see the forces at play. Is power clearly consolidated right at the very top?
Yeah, or is everything about following the exact steps in some manual?
Or is it run by committees of, credentialed experts arguing about standards?
Yeah. Or does it feel like a collection of semi-independent units, each doing its own thing under broad targets?
Or like you said, does it just feel like this fluid group of people constantly figuring things out together on different projects?
Right.
Recognizing those patterns, thanks to Mintzberg, it really can change how you understand the culture there, where decisions really get made, and maybe why they face the specific challenges they do.
Absolutely. It helps you move beyond just the surface descriptions, like the mission statement or the org chart, to understanding the underlying organizational DNA, so to speak.
Yeah, the DNA. I like that. Well, this deep dive into Mintzberg's framework really does equip us, and hopefully you listening, with just a much more powerful lens to look inside organizations. We've seen those 5 core components: Apex, core, middle line, technostructure, support staff. We've seen their preferred ways of coordinating things.
Direct supervision, standard output, standard processes, standard skills.
Right, and how the dominance of one of those elements in its coordination method leads to these 5 pretty distinct structural types. Simple: machine bureaucracy, professional bureaucracy, divisionalized, and adhocracy.
It gives you a way to sort of map the terrain of organizational life, doesn't it?
It really does. So here's maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to take away from this. Thinking about the organizations you interact with regularly. Maybe your workplace, perhaps a club you belong to, even businesses you're just a customer of. Which of these Mintzberg structures feels most dominant there? Which one seems to describe its core logic? And maybe which seems most effective for what they're trying to do today?
Yeah, and maybe how might understanding that underlying structure change how you approach working within it or interacting with it or even trying to influence or change it?
Exactly. Something worth observing maybe the next time you encounter a new organizational beast out in the wild.
Definitely something to chew on.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.